The massive rescue fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system in perfect formation. What they found waiting for them defied every expectation and challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. Lieutenant Su Young was among the first to see it. Her reconnaissance fighter had been launched from the Iron Will as soon as the fleet arrived, tasked with conducting a preliminary survey of the system. What her sensors detected made her question whether her equipment was functioning properly. Earth appeared normal from this distance, a blue and white marble hanging in space exactly as it should be. But Mars was completely dark, showing no signs of the massive human colony that had flourished there for over a century. The asteroid, mining stations that should have been bustling with activity, floated silently in the void like abandoned ghost ships. But it was what surrounded Earth that truly shocked her. Massive geometric structures orbited the planet, clearly artificial, but unlike any technology in the galactic databases. They were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. And they pulsed with energy patterns that made nearby space itself seem to bend and twist. "Control, this is Scout 1, Su Young reported, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am seeing structures around Earth, unknown design. They appear to be affecting local space-time." Captain Minho received the report on the bridge of the Iron Will with growing concern. The tactical displays showed the same impossible readings that Su Young was reporting. The structures were generating energy fields that interfered with normal sensor operations and made accurate measurements difficult. Dr. Haywan watched the data streaming in from the reconnaissance flights with fascination and horror. The energy signatures matched the fragments she had been analyzing, but seeing them at full strength was overwhelming. The structures were not just generating energy, they were reshaping the fundamental nature of space around Earth. "These readings are impossible," she whispered to her Altarian colleagues. "The energy requirements alone should collapse local space-time. But somehow the structures are maintaining stable operation." The alien crews throughout the fleet struggled to understand what they were seeing. The Nexari science vessels attempted to analyze the structures using their crystal-based sensor arrays, but the results were inconsistent and contradictory. The Zephyrian exploration ships tried to map the energy fields, but their peaceful technology was not designed to study such aggressive phenomena. Then, cutting through the confusion and speculation, came a transmission from Earth itself. It was not the desperate plea for help that everyone expected, but a clear professional communication from Earth Defense Command. Commander Wu Jin appeared on the main screens throughout the fleet. The human officer looked exhausted, his uniform showing signs of extended duty, but his expression was grimly determined. Behind him, the command center buzzed with activity, as human personnel worked at their stations with the focused intensity that aliens had learned to associate with human crisis management. "This is Earth Defense Command to the approaching fleet," Wu Jin began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had been dealing with an impossible situation for days. "We appreciate your response to our transmission, but we need to clarify the nature of our communication." He paused, and his next words sent shockwaves through every ship in the rescue fleet. "We did not call for rescue. We called to issue an evacuation warning for the surrounding systems. Earth has encountered an automated defense network left behind by an extinct civilization. These structures are terraforming weapons designed to remake planets into something alien and hostile." The implications hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. They had assembled the largest military force in galactic history to rescue humanity, only to discover that humanity was not asking for rescue. They were asking everyone else to get to safety. Commander Wu Jin continued his briefing with the systematic thoroughness that characterized human military communications. "The structures appeared 6 days ago and began terraforming operations immediately. They have already processed 12 star systems in this sector, completely altering the planetary environments to support an unknown form of life." Captain Minho felt a chill run down his spine. 12 star systems. The scale of the threat was beyond anything the galaxy had faced in recorded history, and apparently, Earth was planning to fight it. "Our analysis indicates that the terraforming process is controlled by a central network that must be destroyed to stop the spread," Wu Jin explained. "Earth Defense Command has developed a solution, but it requires implementation from within the Sol system. We are advising all nearby civilizations to evacuate to a minimum safe distance of 50 light-years. Dr. Haywan realized what this meant before most of the alien crew members did. They are going to fight those things, she said quietly. Humanity is planning to engage structures that have already destroyed 12 star systems. The thought was both inspiring and terrifying. Every other species in the galaxy would have fled immediately when faced with such overwhelming force. But humans were preparing to stand and fight, even against impossible odds. Lieutenant Su Young continued her reconnaissance mission, flying closer to the mysterious structures despite the obvious danger. Her fighter's shields flared as she passed, through energy fields that should have torn the small craft apart. But human engineering had built the ship to withstand punishment that would destroy most alien vessels. The structures are actively scanning Earth, she reported. They appear to be analyzing the planet's composition and atmosphere. I think they are preparing to begin terraforming operations. This news prompted immediate activity throughout the human ships in the fleet. If the structures were preparing to attack Earth directly, then time was running out. Whatever humanity was planning to do, they needed to do it soon. Admiral Subin opened a communication channel to Earth Defense Command from her position aboard the Altarian vessel Blue Tide. As the senior military officer in the rescue fleet, she needed to understand the human plan. Commander Wu Jin, this is Admiral Subin of the Galactic Defense Fleet. What assistance do you require? We have medical ships, supply vessels, and combat units available. Wu Jin's response was both polite and firm. Admiral, we appreciate the offer, but our operation requires precise coordination with Earth-based systems. The presence of additional ships in the combat zone would compromise our tactical approach. It was a diplomatic way of saying that the alien ships would only get in the way. Human military doctrine was based on overwhelming firepower and aggressive tactics that most aliens found difficult to understand or support. But Admiral Subin was not easily dismissed. She had worked with human forces before and understood their capabilities. Then at least tell us what you're planning. If this threat spreads beyond the Sol system, the entire galaxy needs to be prepared. There was a long pause before Wu Jin answered. When he spoke, his voice carried a note of grim determination that sent chills through every alien listener. We are going to turn Earth itself into a weapon, Admiral. Our scientists have discovered that the terraforming network is vulnerable to specific quantum frequencies that can only be generated by destabilizing our planet's magnetic field in a controlled manner. The alien commanders throughout the fleet exchanged shocked glances. The idea of deliberately destabilizing a planet's magnetic field was so dangerous that most species had banned research into such techniques. But humans were apparently planning to implement it as a practical solution to their current crisis. Engineer Curie tried to explain the plan to her Nexari colleagues, but even she had difficulty understanding the full scope of what humanity was attempting. They want to turn Earth into a giant electromagnetic pulse device, she said slowly. The energy release should destroy the terraforming network, but what? Asked Vel Kim. But there is no guarantee that Earth will survive the process, Curie admitted. They are risking their entire planet to stop this threat. The rescue fleet found itself in an unprecedented situation. They had come to save humanity, only to discover that humanity was preparing to save the galaxy by risking everything they held dear. It was a level of selfless determination that most alien species found difficult to comprehend. As the fleet maintained its position at the edge of the system, the alien crew members watched with a mixture of awe and terror as Earth prepared for the most dangerous gamble in human history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called within 6 hours of receiving the report from Kepler Station. The Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, normally a place of careful debate and measured discussion, buzzed with urgent whispers and fearful glances. Representatives from 47 different species filled the curved seats that surrounded the central speaking platform. Jun Ho sat in the human delegation section, his face showing the same confusion and concern that gripped everyone in the chamber. As Earth's primary representative to the Council, he should have been the first to know about any crisis affecting his home world. The fact that he had received no communication from Earth was as troubling as the distress signal itself. The session was called to order by Speaker Veltron, an elderly Nexari whose crystalline body reflected the chamber's lights in complex patterns. The ancient being had presided over the council for over 2 centuries and had never seen the assembly in such a state of agitation. "We gather today to address an unprecedented situation," Speaker Veltron announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The human homeworld of Earth has transmitted a distress signal requesting immediate assistance." A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the assembly. Many of the representatives had heard rumors, but this was the first official confirmation. Several species delegates immediately activated their communication devices to contact their home governments. Counselor Ye Yun rose from her seat in the Terran Coalition section. The middle-aged woman had spent her entire career working to maintain peaceful relations between the various human colonies and their alien neighbors. Her usually calm demeanor showed signs of strain as she addressed the assembly. "Honored colleagues," she began, "the Coalition worlds stand ready to provide any assistance needed to our ancestral home. We have medical ships, supply vessels, and emergency response teams that can be dispatched immediately." Her offer was met with an uncomfortable silence. Most of the council members were struggling with a fundamental problem. What could possibly threaten Earth? Humans were universally acknowledged as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Their homeworld was classified as a class number-themed death world, a planet so hostile that most aliens required environmental suits just to survive a brief visit to the surface. Admiral Subin stepped forward from the military advisory section. The Korean woman had commanded joint species fleets for 15 years and had worked closely with human military units throughout her career. Her weathered face bore the marks of someone who had seen real combat, and her voice carried the authority of proven experience. "Council members," she said, "before we discuss response options, we need to understand what we are facing. Earth has never requested assistance for anything. Human military doctrine is based on self-reliance and overwhelming force. For them to send a distress signal suggests a threat beyond our current understanding." Representative Zeknal of the Zephyrian Collective stood up, his tall, thin frame trembling slightly. The peaceful Zephyrians had always maintained friendly relations with humans, but they also harbored a deep fear of human military capabilities. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we should consider the possibility that this is some kind of test or military exercise. Humans are known for their unconventional training methods." Several other representatives nodded hopefully, eager to embrace any explanation that did not involve a genuine threat to Earth. But Admiral Subin shook her head firmly. "I have reviewed all available military communications," she said. "This is not an exercise. Human fleet assets throughout the galaxy have gone silent. Colony worlds are not responding to routine check-ins. Something has happened." Counselor Morgeth of the Altarian Federation requested permission to speak. The blue-skinned diplomat was known for his careful analysis and measured responses to crisis situations. His species had been among the first to establish formal relations with humanity, and they maintained extensive trade agreements with human worlds. "The Federation has commercial interests in 17 human systems," he reported. "As of this morning, we have lost contact with all of them. Our merchant vessels report that human space traffic has ceased entirely. This is not normal operational procedure." The implications of this information sent a chill through the assembly. Humans were the most active traders and explorers in the galaxy. Their ships could be found in almost every inhabited system, carrying goods, conducting research, or simply satisfying their species' legendary curiosity about the universe. For all human activity to cease, simultaneously suggested a coordinated response to some massive threat. Representative Hixara of the Crystalline Domains stood to address the assembly. Her species had a unique relationship with humans, as they were among the few aliens who could actually survive on Earth's surface for extended periods. This had led to extensive cultural and scientific exchanges between their civilizations. "My people have worked closely with human engineers and scientists for many years," she said. "We have observed their problem-solving methods firsthand. When humans encounter a challenge, their first response is not to call for help. Their first response is to build something that can destroy the challenge completely." She paused to let this sink in before continuing. "If humans are asking for assistance, it means they have already tried to solve the problem themselves and failed. This should terrify us all." The chamber erupted in worried conversations as delegates tried to process this information. The idea that something could defeat humanity in direct confrontation was almost incomprehensible to most galactic civilizations. Humans had ended 3 major wars by the simple expedient of making their enemies extinct. They had colonized planets that other species considered uninhabitable. They had built megastructures in asteroid fields just because they found the engineering challenge interesting. Junho finally requested permission to address the council. As the official human representative, his words carried special weight in this situation. The assembly fell silent as he approached the central speaking platform. "Fellow council members," he began, "I will be honest with you. I do not know what is happening on Earth. I have not received any communication from my government regarding this crisis. This troubles me more than I can express." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different species. Many of them showed obvious fear, while others displayed the kind of grim determination that came with facing an unknown threat. "But I can tell you this," he continued. "If Earth has sent a distress signal, then the situation is serious beyond our current understanding. My people do not ask for help lightly. We prefer to handle our problems ourselves even when assistance would be welcome." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "However, Earth has always honored its obligations to the galactic community. When other worlds have faced crises, human ships have been among the first to respond. Human soldiers have died defending alien colonies. Human engineers have rebuilt worlds devastated by natural disasters. If Earth needs help now, then we owe it to them to provide that help." The speech had its intended effect. Several representatives who had been hesitant to get involved began nodding in agreement. Humans had indeed proven themselves to be reliable allies and generous neighbors, despite their fearsome reputation. But the underlying fear remained. If something could threaten Earth directly, what chance did the rest of the galaxy have against it? Some delegates were already calculating evacuation routes for their home systems. Others were quietly instructing their governments to begin emergency preparations. Speaker Veltron called for formal discussion of response options. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the Council's long history. Some representatives argued for immediate military intervention. Others suggested diplomatic contact to determine the nature of the threat. A few advocated for evacuation of nearby systems as a precautionary measure. Through it all, one question remained unspoken but present in everyone's minds. If humanity could not handle this crisis alone, what hope did the rest of the galaxy have? The session continued deep into the night, with delegates struggling to find answers to questions they had never imagined having to ask. Outside the chamber, emergency messages flashed between star systems as governments began preparing for the unthinkable. Something had threatened Earth directly. And for the first time in galactic history, the humans were asking for help. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Iron Will, watching the largest rescue fleet in galactic history assemble around him. Ships from dozens of different species had answered the Council's call for assistance, creating a massive formation that stretched across several thousand kilometers of space. The sight should have been inspiring, but Minho felt only a growing sense of unease. The fleet was impressive by any standard. Altarian medical vessels with their distinctive blue hulls floated alongside Zephyrian exploration ships. Nexari science platforms looking like floating crystals maintained formation with the angular warships of the Terran coalition. At the center of it all, human vessels provided the backbone of the force. Destroyers, cruisers, and support ships that had been designed for the kind of warfare that most aliens preferred not to think about. What troubled Minho was not the size of the fleet, but its composition. Almost every ship in the formation had been built by human engineers, even those crewed entirely by aliens. Human shipyards had become the primary suppliers of military vessels for most galactic civilizations, simply because human designs were more durable and effective than anything else available. The irony was not lost on him. They were bringing human-built ships to rescue humans from some unknown threat. It suggested that whatever was threatening Earth was beyond the normal scope of galactic military thinking. Dr. Haywan worked frantically in the science section of the Altarian vessel Peaceful Dawn, trying to make sense of the data fragments that had been intercepted from Earth's distress signal. The readings were unlike anything in the scientific databases. Energy signatures that violated known physics, gravitational anomalies that should not exist, and, most disturbing of all, complete radio silence from Earth's normally bustling colony worlds. The Korean scientist had spent her career studying the interaction between different species technologies. She understood how human engineering differed from Altarian biotechnology, or Nexari crystal-based systems. But the energy patterns in the Earth data did not match any known technological approach. They seemed almost organic in nature, yet operated on scales that no biological system could achieve. Dr. Haewon called Commander Rixtel from the ship's bridge. The Altarian officer's blue skin showed the stress patterns that indicated deep concern. "We are receiving updated data from the scout ships. You should see this immediately." Haewon made her way to the bridge where the main display showed the latest reconnaissance reports. The scout ships had pushed ahead of the main fleet to gather preliminary information about the Sol system. What they had found defied explanation. Mars was completely dark. The planet that had been humanity's first major off-world colony showed no signs of life or activity. The massive industrial complexes that had covered the planet's surface were silent. The orbital stations that had managed interplanetary traffic were drifting without power. Even more disturbing, the automated navigation beacons that guided ships through the system had stopped functioning. Engineer Curie reviewed the technical reports from her station aboard the Nexari exploration vessel Crystal Wing. As the only human engineer assigned to an alien crew, she had become the unofficial translator whenever the aliens encountered something that violated their understanding of human behavior. The humans evacuated Mars completely, she explained to the ship's curious crystalline crew. All the industrial equipment was shut down in an organized manner. This was not a panicked evacuation. They had time to plan. The Nexari engineer Vel Kim asked the question that had been troubling everyone. But why evacuate Mars? If Earth was under threat, would it not make more sense to move the population to Mars for safety? Curie studied the data more carefully. The evacuation of Mars had been conducted with typical human efficiency. Nothing valuable had been left behind. Critical equipment had been removed or destroyed. It was the kind of thorough withdrawal that human military doctrine recommended when facing an overwhelming enemy force. They evacuated Mars because they knew something was coming, she realized. Something big enough to threaten the entire system. Throughout the fleet, similar conversations were taking place as alien crew members tried to understand human decision-making processes. The stories they shared painted a picture of humanity that was both reassuring and terrifying. On the Zephyrian medical ship Gentle Healer, the crew discussed how human children played games that would hospitalize most adult aliens. The peaceful Zephyrians found it difficult to understand how a species could consider extreme physical challenges to be entertainment. Aboard the Altarian cruiser Blue Tide, the engineering staff shared stories of human volunteers who signed up for suicide missions as if they were weekend hobbies. The concept of deliberately seeking out dangerous assignments was so foreign to Altarian thinking that they had created special psychological profiles just to understand human military personnel. The Nexari crew of the science vessel illuminated. Path debated whether human music should be classified as a form of psychological warfare. 3 different species had filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council about the mental effects of human musical compositions, particularly the forms humans called heavy metal and industrial. But alongside the fear and confusion, there was also respect. Every alien crew member had stories of human heroism and sacrifice. Human ships that had responded to distress calls in dangerous space. Human engineers who had worked without sleep to repair alien vessels. Human doctors who had risked their lives to provide medical aid during plague outbreaks. Captain Minho received regular reports from the various ships in the fleet. The alien commanders were professional and competent, but he could sense their underlying anxiety. They were heading toward Earth, the most dangerous planet in known space, to face a threat that had apparently overwhelmed humanity's defenses. The journey to the Sol system took 3 days at maximum hyperspace velocity. During that time, the fleet conducted emergency drills and prepared for every possible scenario. Human tactical officers briefed alien crews on combat procedures. Alien scientists shared their expertise on exotic physics phenomena. Medical teams prepared for casualties on a scale that none of them wanted to contemplate. Dr. Haewon continued her analysis of the intercepted data, making increasingly disturbing discoveries. The energy patterns showed signs of directed intelligence, but not any form of intelligence that matched known biological or artificial systems. Whatever was affecting Earth appeared to be actively modifying local space-time, creating distortions that made normal physics equations break down. On the final day of the journey, the fleet received an unexpected transmission. It was not a distress call, but a brief message from Earth's orbital defense platforms. The message was heavily encrypted and contained only basic information. The Sol system was under lockdown. All approaching vessels were advised to maintain safe distance, and Earth Defense Command was implementing what they called Protocol Omega. Captain Minho had never heard of Protocol Omega, but the tone of the message suggested that it was not a standard defensive measure. Human military protocols were usually straightforward and practical. The fact that they had created a special protocol for this situation indicated something unprecedented. Engineer Q consulted her personal database of human military procedures. She found references to various emergency protocols, but Protocol Omega was not among them. Either it was so classified that even she did not have access to it, or it had been created specifically for this crisis. "What does it mean when humans create a new protocol?" asked Velkim. Curie thought carefully before answering. "It means they have encountered something that they never expected to face. Something that requires a completely new approach." As the fleet prepared to drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, tension filled every ship. Alien crew members checked their equipment nervously. Human officers reviewed tactical data with grim concentration. Medical teams prepared for casualties that might be beyond their ability to treat. Whatever had threatened Earth was about to reveal itself. And despite the massive rescue fleet assembling at the system's edge, nobody was certain that they were prepared for what they would find. The final countdown began, and the largest military force in galactic history prepared to discover what could make humanity call for help. Hyun-woo stared at his screen for the third time that morning. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. Working the night shift at Kepler Station meant dealing with the usual collection of distress calls from drunk cargo pilots and mining crews who had wandered too far from safe space. But this signal was different. The communications room hummed quietly around him. Banks of monitors showed the endless stream of radio chatter that flowed between the thousands of ships crossing this sector every day. Most of it was boring trade talk and shipping schedules. Sometimes there would be a real emergency, a pirate attack or engine failure. Those calls got forwarded to the proper authorities quickly. Ginny walked over from her supervisor's desk, her blue skin gleaming under the artificial lights. The Altarian woman had been running this department for 15 years, and she had seen every type of emergency call imaginable. Her large eyes focused on Hyun-woo's screen with mild interest. "Another merchant vessel?" she asked, checking her tablet. "The pirates have been busy this week." Hyun-woo shook his head slowly. He had run the signal through the basic filters twice already, but something about it bothered him. The transmission was weak and broken up, like it had traveled much farther than the usual distress calls they received. Most emergency signals came from ships within a few light years of the station. This one felt different. "I cannot tell where it came from," he said, adjusting the signal parameters. "The source coordinates are scrambled. But look at this encryption pattern." Jin'e leaned closer to study the data. Her expression changed from bored professionalism to confusion. The signal was using military-grade encryption protocols that were far beyond what any civilian vessel would carry. Even more strange, the encryption style was one she recognized but had never expected to see in a distress call. "Run it through the advanced decryption system," she ordered, her voice suddenly tense. Hyun-woo's fingers moved quickly across his keyboard. The advanced systems were normally reserved for high-priority military communications or diplomatic messages. Using them for a random distress call was against standard procedures, but Jin'e's tone suggested this was not a time to worry about procedures. The decryption process took several minutes. While they waited, other staff members in the communications room began to notice the unusual activity. Tae-min, the human security chief, walked over from his post near the main doors. The tall man moved with the careful precision of someone who had spent years in combat zones. His uniform bore the scars and patches that marked him as a veteran of several border conflicts. "Problems?" Tae-min asked, his dark eyes scanning the screens. "Unusual signal," Jin'e replied without looking away from the monitor. "We should have the source information in a moment." The decryption program chimed softly, indicating completion. Hyun-woo opened the results file and felt his breath catch in his throat. The room around him seemed to grow quiet as he read the information displayed on his screen. Jeannie made a small gasping sound and Taemin's face went completely pale. The distress signal was coming from Earth. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The implications of what they were seeing were so enormous that their minds struggled to process the information. Earth had been a member of the Galactic Council for 37 years. In all that time, the human homeworld had never once requested assistance for anything. Ginny was the first to recover her voice. "Check the coordinates again," she whispered. Yanwu ran the verification process 3 more times. Each time the result was the same. The signal was definitely originating from the Sol system, specifically from the 3rd planet. Earth was calling for help. Taemin moved to a nearby workstation and began pulling up files on his personal terminal. His security clearance gave him access to military records that the civilian staff could not see. What he found there made his expression even more grim. "When was the last communication from Earth?" he asked. Yanwu checked the communication logs. Routine shipping manifest 72 hours ago. Before that, a diplomatic message to the Council 5 days ago. Nothing unusual. "What about military channels?" Taemin pressed. Ginny consulted her supervisor's access codes to check the classified communication logs. Her blue skin seemed to grow even paler as she read the results. No military communications from Earth in 72 hours. That is, highly unusual. It was more than unusual. Earth maintained constant communication with its military units stationed throughout the galaxy. Human ships checked in every 12 hours without exception. For there to be no military communications for 3 full days suggested something serious had happened. Taemin was studying casualty reports and fleet movements on his screen. His jaw tightened as he read through the data. 3 human cargo vessels failed to report in yesterday. 2 more missed their scheduled check-ins this morning. And look at this. He turned his monitor so the others could see. The screen showed a tactical map of human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Normally, the map would show hundreds of ships spread across dozens of systems. Today, most of the ships were showing as status unknown or no recent contact. "This is not possible," Jian'e said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yanwu enhanced the audio from the distress signal and played it again. Through the static and interference, they could make out fragments of human voices speaking in urgent tones. The words were too broken up to understand clearly, but the tone suggested serious trouble. The communications room had grown completely silent. Other staff members had noticed the unusual activity around Yanwu's workstation, and word was spreading quickly through the station. A distress call from Earth was not just unusual, it was unprecedented. Taemin activated his command authority and placed the entire communications department under emergency protocols. All non-essential personnel were ordered to leave the room immediately. The remaining staff were sworn to secrecy until the situation could be properly evaluated. "We need to notify the Council immediately," Jian'e said, her training finally overcoming her shock. "Wait," Taemin said, holding up his hand. "Before we do anything, we need to understand what we are dealing with. Earth does not call for help. Ever. In the entire recorded history of human contact with the galaxy, they have never once requested assistance." Yanwu was still studying the signal data, looking for any clue about what might have prompted such an unprecedented message. Hidden in the encryption layers, he found additional data packets that had not been immediately visible. His eyes widened as he decoded the information. "There is more," he said quietly. "Embedded data about some kind of threat. Energy readings that I do not recognize. And coordinates for something in deep space." The 3 of them stared at the screen, each trying to process the implications. If Earth was calling for help, then something truly terrible was happening. And if Earth could not handle it alone, then the rest of the galaxy might be in serious danger. Outside the communications room, Kepler Station continued its normal operations. Ships arrived and departed on schedule. Traders conducted business in the commercial sectors. Diplomats held meetings in the political quarters. None of them knew that everything was about to change. The signal from Earth continued to pulse weakly through space, carrying its desperate message across the void. And in the communications room of Kepler Station, 3 people sat in shocked silence, knowing they held information that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. General Dong Hyun stood before the massive tactical display in Earth's primary command center, studying the real-time data streaming in from sensors across the planet. The underground facility had been designed to survive direct nuclear bombardment, but what humanity was about to attempt would test its limits far beyond the original specifications. Around him, hundreds of technicians worked with the focused intensity that characterized human crisis response. Banks of computers processed calculations that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Engineering teams coordinated the construction of planetary-scale equipment with the same efficiency they might use to build a garden shed. The alien fleet, commanders watching from their ships at the edge of the system, could hardly believe what they were seeing. Through their long-range sensors, they observed human engineering crews working on the planet's surface with impossible speed and precision. Massive construction projects that should have taken years were being completed in hours. Dr. Boram led the primary science team responsible for the theoretical framework of their desperate plan. The brilliant physicist had spent the last 4 days working without sleep, fueled by stimulants and pure determination. Her calculations showed a 73% chance of success, which by human standards was considered quite acceptable odds. The terraforming structures use quantum entanglement to coordinate their operations across multiple star systems, she explained to the assembled military commanders. If we can generate the correct frequency pulse, we can disrupt their entire network simultaneously. What she did not mention was that generating such a pulse required turning Earth's magnetic field into a massive electromagnetic weapon. The process would destabilize the planet's core in ways that had never been attempted before. Most alien scientists would have declared the plan impossible. Human scientists considered it an interesting engineering challenge. Admiral Subin watched the proceedings from her position aboard the Blue Tide with growing amazement. The human evacuation of Earth was proceeding with the same systematic efficiency that characterized all their major operations. Entire cities were being emptied in hours, with the population relocated to orbital stations and colony ships with minimal confusion or panic. "How are they doing this so quickly?" asked Commander Rixtel, the ship's Altarian captain. "Practice," Subin replied grimly. "Humans have been planning for planetary evacuation scenarios since they first achieved spaceflight. They treat it as a standard emergency procedure. The evacuation itself was a marvel of logistics and planning. Every human on Earth knew exactly where to go and what to do in case of planetary emergency. Transportation was coordinated through automated systems that had been tested countless times. Essential personnel remained at their posts while civilians were moved to safety with military precision pilot Jihan led squadrons of human fighters in constant patrols around the mysterious structures orbiting Earth. The alien terraforming devices had begun actively scanning the planet, sending out energy pulses that interfered with normal electronics and made flying extremely dangerous. But human pilots were trained for impossible conditions. "Control, this is Fighter Squadron 7, Jihan reported as his formation completed another high-speed pass near one of the structures. "The devices are increasing their scanning intensity. Estimate 2 hours before they begin active terraforming operations." The time pressure was enormous. If the structures began their terraforming process before Earth's weapon was ready, the planet would be transformed into something alien and hostile. Billions of years of evolution would be erased in a matter of hours. But the human response to this pressure was not panic or despair. Instead, it was the same calm determination that had allowed them to colonize the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Engineering teams worked faster, military units deployed with greater precision. Scientists refined their calculations with increasing accuracy. Dr. Haywan monitored the situation from her position aboard the Peaceful Dawn, trying to understand how humans could remain so composed when facing extinction. The alien observers throughout the fleet were struggling with the same question. Any other species would have fled immediately when confronted with such overwhelming force. "It is their nature," explained Engineer Curie when the Nexari crew asked her about human behavior. "We do not retreat from challenges. We find ways to overcome them." The construction projects on Earth's surface defied all conventional understanding of engineering timelines. Massive electromagnetic coils were being installed at strategic points around the planet. Power generation stations that normally took years to build were operational within hours. Underground facilities were being excavated and equipped with technology that pushed the boundaries of human science. All of this work was being coordinated through communication networks that maintained perfect efficiency despite the electromagnetic interference from the alien structures. Human information systems had been designed to function under combat conditions, and the current crisis was simply another form of warfare. Captain Minho received regular updates from Earth Defense Command as the preparations continued. Each report showed the same pattern: humans working with impossible speed and precision while facing a threat that should have paralyzed them with fear. Phase 1. Construction is complete, reported General Dong Hyun during one of the scheduled briefings. Phase 2 will begin in 30 minutes. Estimated time to full operational status is 4 hours 17 minutes. The timeline was so compressed that alien engineers had difficulty believing it was possible. The humans were building planetary-scale weapon systems faster than most species could construct simple buildings, but the quality of their work remained flawless, with each component tested and verified before installation. Lieutenant Su-young continued her reconnaissance flights, now operating within the energy fields generated by the alien structures. Her fighter's hull showed signs of stress from the exotic radiation, but human engineering had built the craft to withstand punishment that would vaporize most alien vessels. The structures are preparing for coordinated action, she reported. Energy levels are increasing across all 7 devices. Whatever they are planning to do, it will happen soon. This information prompted the final phase of Earth's defensive preparations. The planetary weapon system that human scientists had designed was unlike anything in galactic history. It would turn Earth's magnetic field into a massive pulse generator, creating electromagnetic effects that could be detected from neighboring star systems. Dr. Boram made final adjustments to the quantum frequency calculations while her team prepared for the most dangerous experiment ever attempted by any species. They were about to destabilize their own planet's magnetic field in a precise pattern that would generate the specific energy signatures needed to disrupt the alien terraforming network. All systems are ready, she announced to the command center. We can initiate the pulse sequence on your order. General Dong Hyun looked around the command center at the hundreds of personnel who had made this moment possible. They had worked without rest for 4 days, building impossible devices and implementing theoretical concepts that existed only in the most advanced scientific literature. And they had done it all while their planet was under direct threat from forces beyond their understanding. Initiate the sequence, he ordered. Across Earth's surface, the massive electromagnetic coils began to charge. Power stations pushed their output to maximum levels. Underground facilities hummed with energy, as exotic physics equations became engineering reality. The planet itself began to vibrate, slightly as its magnetic field was gradually reshaped into a weapon of unprecedented power. The alien fleet at the edge of the system watched in awe and terror as Earth prepared to fire the largest weapon ever constructed. Energy readings from the planet were climbing beyond anything in their experience. Space around Earth began to shimmer as electromagnetic fields reached levels that distorted local reality. And in the command center beneath Earth's surface, human personnel calmly monitored their instruments and prepared to discover whether their desperate gamble would save the galaxy or destroy their homeworld. The countdown began, and humanity prepared to prove once again that there was no challenge too great for species willing to risk everything in defense of what they valued.